Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and this past weekend was essentially the launch event for the competitive season of the Riftbound card game. It was the Houston regional qualifiers, over 1,000 players for 9 rounds of Swiss Day 1 into a top 64 cut Day 2, and honestly I'm really excited to go over this event. I've been seeing a lot of coverage around the internet. It's been looking super fun. The stream was awesome to watch as well, so if you guys don't watch, don't want to get spoiled for what won the event, you have just a couple seconds to click off this video, but honestly, it was a great time and looking forward to more in the future as well. So real quick though, before we get started, if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe. We make a lot of content for the Riftbound card game and I don't want you guys to miss it. Also, if you guys want any of the deck lists we're going over and many more, you can find them on my website, Eggman Events, which is linked in the description. We have a good amount of the top 64 as of this recording. We have about half of the top 64, and I'm pretty sure like this video is going to be out of date like immediately after I publish it, but I do want to just kind of go over my thoughts on the decks that we have right now. So we also do kind of have this tournament hub section. We do have the tournament deck list where we have over, I think, like 300 deck lists for this game already for this meta in general, and we're going to continue to add to it as well. So so as we go through it, we're going to look at the top 64. So we did have 27 copies of Kaisa, 11 copies of Annie, 11 copies of Master Yi, 7 copies of Misfortune, 3 Teemo, and then single copies of Darius, Yasuo, Viktor, Lee Sin, and Volibear. And we also do have the legend breakdown on the other side for what people brought too. So I think like it's pretty understood that Kaisa is pretty strong, right? I think a lot of people, including myself, thought that was like the best deck in the format, and I think that's still true despite it not, spoilers, winning the event. And I did have a tier list kind of before the event. I still think this is pretty accurate. My kind of surprises for it is one, Set didn't get a top 64 finish, which I'm surprised about, and I think a lot of people are too. It did win 2 large events going into this format, so going from winning events to not topping a top 64 is a bit of a surprise finish for me. So I am surprised that didn't happen, and maybe I am ranking it a little bit higher. Annie definitely did have a breakout performance. I think it did have 11 tops in the top 64, but also it did get the 3 spots in the top 4, which is incredible for that deck to do. So I think that's something that's a lot of people are figuring out that Annie is actually pretty viable in this meta in general. We do also have I think Ari should have topped this event too, and it didn't do that. I was a little bit surprised about that. We did have also Lee Sin and Volibear, 2 decks that I didn't think we were going to get into the top 64, get into the top 64 as well. And then I think the rest is about where I kind of thought they were at. But in general, I think this meta is really open still right now. There's still like a lot of counterplay, and we're still like in set 1, which is what I think is incredible, right? We have set 2, we got a lot of spoilers. I think the full set is likely released as of this recording too, so we're going to be able to look at that in the near future. But just a lot of exciting things. So real quick though, again, if you guys want to see in the deck list, you can find them on the website. We are missing right now the unique deck list of Darius and Volibear. As soon as I get them, I'll make sure to add them on the website, and I'll probably have a pinned comment for when I do. But right now we're going to look at all of the unique legends for the top 64, and we're going to start off with our first place list, which is Dhaliwal's version of Annie. And kind of mentioned again, we did have 3 copies of Annie in the top 4, which I thought was surprising. We didn't have any Kaisa in the top 4 either, which a lot of people I think were surprised about as well. And we are going to look at all 3 of the top 4 decks. So we have this one. You also have Zent's build as well as Prymor's build as well. But I will be kind of pessimistic and say that these are pretty solid like foundations for what these builds look like. There's not a lot of wiggle room for what changes, because I think the main way you play this deck is pretty understood. So everyone's kind of playing the 3 same battlefields. As that's not already pretty relevant, right? I think Zon Warrens just makes sense, especially since we do likely run the scrap heap. So kind of the mentality for this is Zon Warrens is your turn 1 battlefield. You have your scrap heaps for some additional card advantage for game 1. And then for the next couple games, you switch to Dreaming Tree and the Arena's Greatest. So, and because of that, you get to side out your scrap heap for cards that make sense for kind of the counter matchup that you're facing, right? And kind of like the other kind of parts for this deck, right? We do have just a lot of ways to get a lot of early points for this deck, and a lot of ways for just a lot of consistency. Stack Deck has obviously been a very great card in this game already. We have Traveling Merchant, which lets us get a discard 1, draw 1. Being able to put more and more cards into our trash for our Vi is fantastic. Vi and Ride the Wind, I think, is still like one of the best finishers in the game. The fact that you're able to just get both battlefields pretty easily with this combo is fantastic. You don't need a lot of setup, and you only need to run, 4, you only have 4 runes active to be able to use the effect, right? So 2 for Vi, 2 for Ride the Wind, and unless they have something like a Defy or like a Hidden Blade, something that just directly counters Ride the Wind or directly removes the Vi, you're likely winning a lot of points. Like Vi can easily get to like 20 plus might in a lot of situations, and because of that, it's just really hard to be on the defense for when that happens. And again, with it getting the ganking, you get to move it over to the other battlefield afterwards, and it's usually enough to go for game. So other than that, I think we are playing a lot of the good cards. We do see the sideboard as well. We also have the Draven, which I like as a good add for this deck, right? Especially since we are playing the Arena's Greatest. We get to pretty easily just get like a 5 plus might unit on the board, because if we, since we're so easy at getting points in the early game, especially with cards such as Sneaky Deckhand, we'll be at like 3 or 4 points. And then if we're at 4 points, this becomes a 7 might that we play for 5 cost. And I think for a lot of like removal cards that exist right now, 7 might is kind of like gets over that. So anything you can get to 7 might right now is in a really good spot, and it makes it really tricky. Like the fact that you get out of Falling Star just is like your biggest contention point for it. So other than that, if you haven't bought your third copy of Flash, like I have, rest in peace, because this card has gone even higher up into the echelons of high price commons. But I think this obviously still is a good card. If you only have 2 copies of it, I'll still say that you should probably play this deck. You don't have to, but you do also have to play a couple copies of Kaisa, and this one might be a little bit more expensive for it. So again, this is Dhaliwal's build. We also do have Zents and Prymors. I will say again, like without being too pessimistic, pretty similar, I think, build wise, right? I think like the opposite is true though for this build of Annie. I think the idea is that since we have the scrap heaps in the side, we start with either Arena's Greatest or Dreaming Tree, and then we side into Zon Warrens on game 2. So I think that's like another way to play it, right? And you can kind of see that because the scrap heaps are in the trash, and then we also do have like the Vein, which we can also put in the middle. It could also be Dreaming Tree. I won't say that I'm the best at this at this deck, but I do want to just offer the deck list for you guys. And then also Prymor, I think a little bit more similar to the first build, where we do have all these additions for it. I don't think like Falling Star is as good for this deck as people incline, so at least that's one less expensive card you get to play. But again, the rest of the deck is kind of expensive for it, so not much more to say. I think that Annie's in a really good spot. It is a deck that is very linear, I think, in one way, so that means that if there is a way to counter it, it will have to kind of adapt to it. But it also means that this deck is in a really good spot, and if there's not a lot of counters, there's not going to be a lot of ways to check it either. So here are all the builds. Congratulations to all of our top 64 Annie players from this weekend. Next up, we've got the Master Yi here. So we've got 2 decks. We've got Challenger TCG as well as Jackson Hoang, which was able to get top 8, and these are kind of like opposite decks in the way where how they're kind of constructed and how their sideboard is constructed. But there was, like, going into this event, I would say it again, like Dazzling Aurora I think was kind of underperforming in the events that were happening around North America, and I wasn't seeing as many people get results for it. And I would say kind of like the mid-range build was kind of one of my more favorite builds of Master Yi, but this is also as someone who doesn't own 3 copies of Dazzling Aurora, so that may have changed my opinion on it. But I do think that the Aurora build is still in a really good spot. So there is kind of an issue though that I think that Annie can be fast enough where you do have to be really worried about that deck kind of taking off. So I think a lot of people kind of made this compromise on how to build Master Yi, and it's kind of like a combination of both of them. So Challenger TCG, their build, you do kind of have a little bit more of, like, in the main, we do have like the Dazzling Aurora stuff. So we have Dazzling Aurora, Volibear, Dead Bloom, White Flame, and Tasty Fatefolk, as well as the Mountain Drake, right? So obviously, if you guys don't know what this card does, real quick, at the end of your turn, reveal the top card of your main deck until you reveal a unit, play it, ignoring its cost, and recycle the rest. So if you only play big bodies, you only get to play out big bodies off of that. And I really like this card in this game because it kind of plays around the fact that you can also have like a champion that if you need a unit early game, you can have kind of like this mid cost unit, which Master Yi is a little bit more expensive cost, but it is good to help you kind of survive into getting to your Dazzling Aurora. And then like the sideboard is kind of like, all right, if I'm playing a deck that has like a really good early game, I need to interact with it, we're going to have the Stalwart Poro and the Clockwork Keeper to kind of cycle out the Dazzling Aurora and kind of go back to like an early, like mid-range build, right? That's kind of the way that I see this build from Challenger, and that's kind of how it is. He's also going to likely make some content with it as well, so make sure to follow them on YouTube as well. I do have I didn't mention this, but I'm going to mention it now. Anyone who has a Twitter link, I have put it on the website, so you can click there. They're going to have more information, and if you guys want to ask them questions directly, you can do that way. So, but this is kind of the build for it. I won't say that there's a lot different. I do think like the Mountain Drake is a typical ad at times, but still a very strong unit that honestly, when this hits the board, your opponent can't really do much about it. So here's the build here from Challenger, and then the build from Jackson is, we're running the exact same battlefields, but it's kind of the opposite. So the main deck for this one, we are running 8 copies of, or we are playing like the mid-range build at the start, right? So we've got 3 pit rookies, 3 stalwart poros, 1 clockwork keeper, and 1 Kiana. And then in the main deck we have, or in the side deck we have everything to side that out, right? So it's important that we can only, have 8 copies of like small battle units, just because like those are the ones we have to side out for it. But I think that it's kind of a cool way to say, game 1, all right, I know that I'm playing against Annie, then I can stay on this deck and still like not feel as bad against Dazzling Aurora, right? It's really like, what do you feel bad? Do you feel like your matchups as like Dazzling Aurora are worst game 1, or your matchups as mid-range is worst game 1, right? That's kind of like the decision point between the two of them. But I really do think like having this like kind of counter gameplay style in the sideboard is something really unique and very cool, and it's cool to see that it worked in both directions, right? Either starting off on the mid-range build or starting off with the Dazzling Aurora. Being able to go to the other one on the side, I think is really, really cool. So I don't have really much more to say. I think that both these players are fantastic, and I have a bias against Jackson because Jackson's a really good player and I've seen it with my own eyes, but it's really cool to see him and a lot of other One Piece players do very well this weekend, and I kind of expect that to be more of the norm in the future as well. So congratulations to all of our Master Yi players who were able to get into a top 64 finish here. All right, next up we've got our top placing Kai'Sa player, and apologies for saying this incorrectly, but Mateusz with their build of Kai'Sa here. And as expected, right, Kai'Sa was very present this weekend. It was the most played legend for the weekend, as well as the best legend in the top 64, getting almost 50% of that top 64. But wasn't able to get a top 4 finish, which again, I think a lot of people were surprised about. But the thing with being like the best deck in the format is that you also have the biggest target on your back, right? This is kind of a deck where everyone kind of knows how the deck plays. Doesn't mean they're going to be able to play around it, but it is something that people are aware of what your kind of tricks are. So for this one, I do think Kai'Sa, you will notice that there are just a lot of differences between builds, a lot of like individual ratios. You also will see that people will have their favorite 3 battlefields. I think I went through all the Kai'Sa decks that we went through, and a lot of people had a lot of different battlefields for theirs. So Arena's greatest, since we can kind of push aggressive a little bit earlier, I really do like Candlelit Sanctum, especially with its interaction with the 4-drop Kai'Sa. The fact that you're able to look top 2 and then draw afterwards if you want to means that being able to get that knowledge for the card you want, or see 2 cards that you don't want and draw a 3rd card, I think that's very good. And then also the Reaver's Row, the fact that you are able to keep your things alive, and then like you, for example, capture it with your Kai'Sa, and then you can bring it back and then capture it again, get that extra draw. It's just very good for those situations. So other than that, I'm going to say like there's not too much, I think, difference. I think one big difference I have seen is that Smokescreen has kind of left the sideboard and entered the main board for a lot of players. I do think that this -4, even though it's a little bit expensive, right? It's 2 energy and it means it's a recycle 1, even though recycle means a little bit less in the builds for specifically for Kai'Sa. I do think that more and more decks are kind of countered by this card, and it's finding a lot more room in that main board. So I also will say that surprisingly, we don't have the signature spell in the main for this deck, but I also think that's kind of understood. There are a lot of decks that I think are playing around it as well, and if you're playing like the Smokescreen in the main, I think that makes sense too. So but it is surprising, right? We do have it in the side, right? But we're only playing 1 copy. We're playing the unchecked power for, I'm going to say specifically any like Aurora builds, because being able to do 12 damage to all units does help you get there a lot of the time as well. There are also some weird times where you can, like, if you have Darius on the board already, you can uncheck power and then you can play like a cleave or something, and then you get to ready the Darius and move it. So that kind of mentality is really nice as well. If you somehow have 12 runes, you can uncheck power and then play Darius and then get there. So but you can also, if you also have 11 runes and 12 runes and you've kept Kai'Sa in your champion spot, then you can keep that there. But obviously a really strong deck. I'm not going to go feature this one too much because I think everyone kind of knows what Kai'Sa looks like, but just because you know what it looks like doesn't mean that you know how to play it. I think Mateusz had like a really fantastic run. A slight misplay I think on stream where they forgot to get the point off the Arena's greatest, so that does kind of happen still, but I think just a fantastic run, and a great congratulations for being the top placing Kai'Sa, especially when there are like 300 others plus Kai'Sa players trying to take that spot from you. So there there it is there. All right, next up we've got Misfortune. We've got 2 builds of it, and they're going to be moderately similar, but I do kind of want to focus on 2 of them. So we do have Anthony's build, who was able to get a top 16 and was our top placing Misfortune. We also do have the build from Kidleotcg, who was able to be the first player undefeated in Swiss, but was unfortunately knocked out of the first game of top 64, so wasn't able to get the spot there. But I think like Misfortune was, again, a deck that I thought, had some usage. I saw some people do kind of well with it, but it was kind of falling off in the last week or so, and now it's kind of like, I would say explosive might be too much of a word for it, but more Misfortunes were able to top than I was really expecting for it. So again, this is again a Dazzling Aurora build, right? Like as known, right? We can see the Aspirant's Climb, we can see the Sigil of the Storm and the Obelisk of Power, all of these cards, right? Just being able to help us get to late game a little bit easier, or just get to our runes that we need to a little bit easier. So that is pretty strong. Again, I do like the fact that if we need to, sometimes we can play Misfortune early and use it to help us interact with some cards. The fact that we also get to ready something that's exhausted is really good for it as well. So all of that feels strong. We do have like Stack Deck, and then again, Stack Deck with Dazzling Aurora is a fantastic combo. It just means that you're going to find it a lot more consistently. Doesn't mean you're always going to, but you will be a little bit better at it. We do also have the Mind Splitter. I know a lot of people have been fancying this card. This has actually been one of my favorite cards to use recently too. Just the fact that you are able, the 7 Might is honestly like the best part about it, right? Sure, they can still like Stupefy and Falling Star or whatever, but the fact that you are able to like look at your opponent's hand and take something from it is insanely strong, and we're going to see it again in a future Yasuo build. But off the rip from the Dazzling Aurora, awfully not a terrible card. I do also like a single copy of the Harrowing, being able to use this to play a card from your trash. You do have to pay its power cost, so it's not as like good as Dazzling Aurora sometimes, but being able to know what you're getting is great. And obviously Harrowing with Dead Bloom Predator is in a good spot, which again, if you don't have 3 copies of this card, I do apologize, because you likely won't anytime soon, but there it is there. So this is kind of the build for Misfortune, and then we do have some addition for some things. I do think Fading Memories, it's been, I thought like this card was like a little bit slow sometimes, or a little bit tough to deal with, but this does have like some really good removal potential, and I think it does help in a lot of situations. So I think it's been very good. I think a lot of people have been finding the strength of Rebuke as well, just to return a unit to his battlefield, to its owner's hand. Obviously, one of the ways to counter Dazzling Aurora has been like, all right, well, you played it for free off the Aurora, I'm just going to give it back to you for free and enjoy. So that can be tough to deal with, and in general, it's very good. So also the bullet time, the fact that like this can help you just get some really good removal if you need to, can be helpful, and I think that's been good for the deck in general. So there's a build from Anthony, and we also have Kid Leo. So honestly, pretty similar, right? I don't think there's too much difference. We do have the single copy of the Volibear to help us get even bigger. Like this is obviously like the strongest unit in the game when it comes to just being able to defend. Like having shield 3 when defending, having tank, being able to draw cards when they move stuff. It's very difficult to interact with this card by battle, but unfortunately it can just get hidden bladed like everything else. We do have like access to the Unyielding Spirit too, which can be helpful to defend your board. Possession, which I think this card's a little bit too optimistic in a game where retreat can just prevent it and make you cry, but there are some decks that don't have ways to interact with this cleanly, so this can be helpful, but it is I'd say a bit of a greedy card to be playing. So other than that, I don't have much more to say. I think Misfortune definitely had a really good weekend, and congratulations to all of our top 64 Misfortune players. All right, next up we've got Teemo, and this is Gorica's build. I'm likely saying that wrong too, and I'll be honest, and I'm not going to sound like a hater, but I've been watching a lot of games, I've been trying to play a lot of Teemo, and I've been having a hard time saying like you get like a lot of the good cards that Kaisa gets to use, you get a lot of the good cards that like Annie gets to use, right, with Mind and with Chaos, but I feel like the Fury runes are really what kind of make a deck go from good to broken sometimes. So I think that Teemo does have like a lot of great abilities, and it's still a viable deck. I'm not saying that it is, but it's really tough to be in the spot without a lot of the fuse. Like Kaisa and Annie feel like you just are like the other halves of these decks that just end up doing a little bit better, right? Like being able to have cards like Ride the Wind is strong. Retreat, we just mentioned, is great. Stack Deck is still fantastic right now. We also do have the options to play both the Thousand Tail Watcher. Tide Turner is also like a really cool way to change up, what's at what spot and everything. But I just feel like, it's still kind of missing a little bit of something sometimes, right? So we aren't playing the double hidden battlefield, which I think is a little bit surprising, but it can make sense. I also do like the addition of the Windswept Hillock, because there are times where like you can do something like if you have nothing better to do, like you can play Dr. Mundo for 2. You can use the Ride the Wind to move it to the Hillock. You're able to get the point. It's going to be active, so then you can gank to the other side. So it's it's a worse Vi combo, but it's still a viable Vi combo that this deck can do. So that can be strong. We do have access to like the Smoke Screen. We do have like the Sprite Mother. Like again, we have like a lot of good cards that both of these kind of colors can offer for us with both Mind and Rune. I just feel like, with Mind and Chaos, it just feels like it's missing a little bit something from my own testing. So I think, again, Teemo's fantastic. I think it's very strong. I'm not trying to sound like a hater for it, but it's just like a deck that I feel like they're like the boss monsters are good for both like the Thousand Tail Watcher. And again, there is a game where like you play Mundo and then the rest of the game becomes like defending your Mundo as it holds the spot for the rest of the game. But I just find like it's a little bit tough to consistently, get to those spots where like if you're winning, Teemo will continue to win. But if you're not winning, or even if you don't have access to a battlefield, like you do get a little bit worse because it just turns off all your hidden abilities. So I don't have much more to say. You guys can correct me. You guys can have your own opinions with it. I still think Teemo's good, and whenever I dunk on a deck, it just means I'm going to lose to it at my next locals. So I'm looking forward to that as well. But it's just like in a weird spot, and I don't know what I would want to change with Teemo to make it a little bit more viable. But here's the build here. Congratulations, Gorica, for their finish with Teemo. All right, next up we've got Lee Sin. So this is Jeff Jones' build, and I also want to say a big thank you for the community to kind of cyberbully him into releasing the build. Jokes aside, I know a lot of people are wanting to see how he's been cooking, how he's been playing Lee Sin, and it's definitely a deck where a lot of people, including myself, are just like, Lee Sin's cool, but Master Yi is just better, right? It's the same combinations of runes. The effect is a little bit more generic. Why would you play Lee Sin over Master Yi, right? And I highly recommend, it's going to be linked on the page too, that he did a huge write-up on the deck. It's going to be better than anything I say. So I recommend going there if you're really committed into going and learning Lee Sin. But in the meantime, I'm going to kind of take a whack at it. So we do have our just standardly good runes, right? We do have the Grove of the Godwillow, Monastery of Frodan, which this is likely our best one since we can, get the buff for free with the deck. Just saying, I'm just going to pay 1, draw 1 is very good in this game. We've got Obelisk of Power too to help us get to the late game a little bit more. We are not a Aurora deck, just in case people are checking, but we are playing a lot of cards that would belong in an Aurora deck. We do also have access to the Kiana. I do think that this is honestly like one of the best cards in the game right now to counter Kaisa. The fact that it's just like a really good deflect unit that then afterwards, like you can, if you need the rune back, you can channel it back. The fact that you can also like draw a card if you need to. The fact that this deck can just buff it for very little means that a 5-might card with deflect is very tough for something like Kaisa to really answer efficiently. So I think that's very strong. I do think that also being able to it's really unfortunate that this turns into a 6-might because you still can just get hit by the Falling Star, but having access to Zonya's Hourglass, like this card, if you're already winning in a winning position, you're in a really good spot. I do like the 6-drop Lee Sin as well. So it has Accelerate, and the other buff units here you get the extra +2, so that does help you a lot. Charm, still a broken card even without like the Master Yi effect to get like the +2 on defense. Challenge is good for trading with stuff, and also the Dragon Rage, right? Move an enemy unit, then choose another enemy unit as a destination. They deal damage to their mites equal to each other. This one's, I think, a little bit more tough to get the full value with, but when you do, it's fantastic. I also think the Uter is an interesting choice, but I like for this deck it makes sense. So spend my buff, choose one you've not chosen this turn. Deal 2 damage to a unit at a battlefield, stun a unit at a battlefield, ready me or give me ganking for the turn. So Since again we're so good at buffing our units with our leader ability, this is going to be very strong for us. We do also have access to Unyielding Spirit, Sabotage, which are two of the best decks, two of the best techs in the game right now, Rune Prison and Primal Strength. So generically, like this deck having like the same thing that like Master Yi gets to do, where you have a lot of ways to counter Kai'Sa specifically, is nice. I think it's something that can help Lee Sin as well, and but it still has an identity of its own as well. So that's what I'm going to say. Again, it's going to be literally worse than anything Jeff Jones can say. So make sure to check out his post if you guys want to see more, and congratulations for their top 64 with Lee Sin. All right, to wrap it up, we've got 3 more decks. We're going to look at Ghael Wynn's version of Yasuo, and if you've been following the channel, I dropped a Yasuo video pretty much like a couple days before this event, so I'm really happy to see you get a top 64 finish. I was hoping a little bit more for it, but it's really cool like how different this build is from what I've been testing, and that makes it really exciting for me, right? The fact that there's like a different way to play it, like there are more cards that I haven't considered, I think that's really cool. So for this deck though, we are still I'd say a Zon Warren Scrap Heap deck game 1, and then we go to either Targon's Peak or Windswept Hillock, right? I do play in my build the Sona, which I think if you're playing Targon's Peak, it's just as good as Sona, so that does make a lot of sense. It is a deck where you have to be really careful about how many runes you spend and which runes you do spend as well. I do like the Tide Turner, so when you play me, you can choose a friendly unit, move me to its location and it to its original location. So the fact that you can use this to just get like another activation of something like Traveling Merchant is cool, but you can also hide it, and then you can use it to like move a Raza the Sunderer to somewhere that it wasn't. Like there are just times where like having 2 is like in a tough spot, and there's also times where like let's say they're trying to get over a spot with Traveling Merchant, you can say, well, I'm going to hide the Tide Turner, and then like if I had like a Yasuo in the back, I can change the locations, and then also now Yasuo is attacking and does 6 damage to something, right? I think that's something that probably caught a lot of people off guard, because most people, if I'm seeing something that's hidden, I'm going to be like, maybe it's Zonya's, maybe it's Fight or Flight. I'm likely never thinking it's Tide Turner. So there's like a lot of ways that you can get this to be tricky, and then you turn into the attacker, which means this Yasuo can get additional value, or you can just have like your Raza the Sunderer and get the ability from here. So if I'm being like super honest, you guys can be like, no, I don't believe you, Eggman, you're lying, you just want to seem cool. I've been really trying to play a lot of Yasuo, and the build that I was playing previously with the Nocturne, I felt like Nocturne was like a little bit too fluffy and like a little bit too like extra to the fact like, oh, I'm never getting it to where like consistently, it wasn't consistently where I'm at, is using too many runes. So I really want to try this build, and it's really cool to see it do well as well. So honestly, just a big congratulations to Ghael Wynn's for the top 64. It really kind of opened my eyes for some more cards that I haven't really considered, and this deck looks just really cool in its own way. So not much more to say, but here's the build. Congratulations to Ghael Wynn's for their finish with Yasuo. And then next up we've got Viktor. So this is the build here from Cody, and again, I again, if I'm going to be a Teemo hater, I'm going to be a Viktor hater, and again, I'm joking, hater's like too strong of a word for it, but it's just like this is a deck that has like a really solid game plan. I think there's a lot of ways to play it, but it just feels like it's missing something, like a little bit of consistency, right? The fact that it also has a tough time against Kai'Sa at times is tough. I mean, the fact that they can just use their signature spell and wipe your entire board still is tough. We do have like Teferian Warcamp, right? I mean, like if we're playing on this battlefield every game, I think this deck is very viable. I think the issue is that like the other battlefields we have to choose are a little bit tougher, right? So we've got Obelisk of Power to be able to get that extra rune, which is helpful. We do also have the Vile Ma's Lair, which when we don't really care about keeping stuff on a battlefield as much, being able to trap something is nice for us. And then kind of the rest of the build for the deck here. So we have like the Stupefy, like we got a lot of like the good blue cards and yellow cards. We got a lot of ways to make recruits. And then we also do have like our top end of like the Singularity, as well as the Thousand-Tailed Watcher. All of these are just great cards. It's just like a lot of this is really dependent on us like getting like the early game, which we can do, right? The fact that when we go, we have a guaranteed turn 1 play with our Legend ability is strong for this deck. I just find like sometimes like if you're behind, it's difficult to get back from behind. So shout out to also running 3 copies of the Riptide Rex. Very fun card, being able to do 6 damage. Like the double might cost is a little bit expensive, but I also find with Viktor more than any other deck is that I run out of things to do, and the extra might cost is it is really superfluous a lot of the time, especially because again we just have a lot of these cheap things. And also the Call to Glory, like shout outs to this card. I definitely have thought about playing this in the fact that like, you know what, if I want to be able to save my Viktor, what's the best way to do so from a Falling Star? And it's to use Call to Glory to make it a 7 might. It's a little bit expensive when you don't have any ways to buff inherently in the main deck, but I think we actually no, we're just actually playing 3, but like at the same time, like we're not really a deck that is going to have to use all of our runes in the late game anyways, so that does offer like a little bit more protection there. So other than that, we do have like Imperial Decree and Grand Stratagem in the side, so not having in the main is a little bit interesting, because I think a lot of people are, you know, it's understood like it's a main deck card most of the time, so not seeing that is interesting. I like Imperial Decree more than Grand Stratagem more times than not, so it's cool to see an ingredients on that. We do play Salvage against Aurora decks, and we have the Cruel Patron and the Smokescreen, which I think Smokescreen can probably still be bumped up to 2 copies in the main, but we'll kind of see the rest from there. But in general, like this looks like a really, it's a different build than anything I've really seen, so I think that's really interesting. That does help the deck a lot, and the Call to Glory ad I'm a really big fan of, again, because it does really help us protect our Viktor in the back, which can just mean like the big difference between like this generating 1 unit or like 7 units, right? Which is a huge difference. So other than that, I don't have much more to say, but congratulations to Cody for their finish with a Viktor. And then lastly, we got one bonus deck. We've got Frodan's build of Leona. And again, I was not a Leona build believer, and I'm going to be honest, I'm still not really a Leona builder believer, but it's really cool to see his performance with this deck this weekend. So you know, I think the biggest thing with Leona is that we're just kind of missing out on more ways to kind of stun cards, right? We have 3 copies of Rune Prison. We've got the copy of Facebreaker. We also do have the Zenith Blade, right? All very good cards, right? But we're just kind of in the spot where it's difficult to get like the full value from it. So again, I do like the Call to Glory. I think this is a great ad for the deck, especially since we do have like the buff to units that we can use off of our legend ability. So that does you know, help a lot. We do have the Leona. We're playing the 4 cost in the back, so which I think is fine. Being able to you know, keep this out consistently is moderately easy for this deck in comparison. So I think that's great there. We do have like the Clockwork Keeper with the Zhonya's Hourglass. We also have the Set, which I'm a big fan of this in the deck too. The fact that we can make this 7 might. It doesn't have to be the card that we, we can buff anything for it. So this is a great card to buff, as well as the Fiora. Being able to make this a 5 might unit obviously makes it mighty, and you get the abilities there. So I think this is a really cool build for how to build Leona. You do kind of have this issue where you don't have like any like super big late game threats, but I think that's kind of more of a thing with the color combination than really anything else that prevents it to from getting there more consistently. The only maybe other thing is like I'd be moderately tempted to play the Vision unit, but I think that's fine. I think this is a really cool build for it. So other than that, we do have like, again, Salvage and Hidden Blade on the side. We've got Windwall for if you're playing against that. We do have one of the 6 cost Leona as well. So being able to play this ready is important. But I do think that it's a weird thing where this is really good at like if you're able to stun something, and this is really good at stunning something, but you don't get as much of a value from stunning. So it's like a weird back and forth where like being able to get the card that benefits from something stunned, and the fact that you have something that stuns in the same hand is a little bit tricky, especially when you don't really have that much card draw in a deck like this one, but we do have some. So other than that, I don't have much more to say. This is the build from Prod, and congratulations for, I'm going to say top 128, might have been like 156 or something, but they had I believe it was a 6-1-2 record throughout the day, which is just fantastic. So not much more to say. Here's the build there. Congratulations for their finish with Leona. But I've been rambling for like 30 minutes. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, even with this being set 1, even with there being a tier 1 best deck in the format with Kaisa, there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of ways for different legends to shine, a lot of ways for players to shine, and I've been really enjoying my time with the Riftbound card game. So not much more to say. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you all next time.